Hello, Guitar Smarts fans. Before you check out this podcast, I want to make you aware of a cool new place where you can interact with other Guitar Smarts listeners. It's a Facebook group called the Guitar Geek Hangout. That's where we hang out and talk about all things guitar. So, if you like the Guitar Smarts podcast, come and chat with Kiran and myself over in the Guitar Geek Hangout on Facebook. Maybe check out some pre-podcast clips and even get involved in asking and answering lots of questions from the other page dwellers. Hope to see you there. Episode number 2. Welcome to the Guitar Smarts podcast. Thanks for downloading. So last week we spoke about inexpensive equipment. This week is very much part 2 to that conversation. And we talk about our thoughts on pedals that we like. Along with that, we're going to give our thoughts on maintaining a simple rig for gigging and the freedom that a simple rig gives you. And Kiran makes a controversial confession about the famous Ibanez Tube screamer. Now, before we get on with it, why not do the following 3 things? Subscribe to this podcast in your favourite podcast app so you never miss a show. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/guitarsmarts and like us on Instagram at guitar_smarts. Right, let's get on with it.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about pedals and cheap pedals today, and stuff that has surprised us, stuff that has underwhelmed us, stuff that we keep in our rig today and still love, and even though it's relatively inexpensive. What's the best inexpensive pedal that you own?
Oh, definitely the best one that I own at the moment is the Spark Boost, which I did mention the last time. Oh, the thing I love about that one is its simplicity, right? It's just a single knob boost pedal. No, it's not a drive pedal. It's not an EQ pedal or anything. It's just a kind of a transparent boost pedal. There's plenty of gain in it. It's really good out of other pedals. You know, if you've got a drive pedal that you're just using to add more gain, it's really good after that to just give you a master volume on your board for increasing things. I don't really need it like that now because I've got this orange Terra Stamp amp, which has actually got 2 master volume settings that you can select from a pedal. So if I just want a general volume boost, I can use that. Though I haven't gigged it yet because I got it this year, and 2020 being what it is, I haven't had the chance to gig it. But I love that Spark Boost pedal specifically because as well it's got this momentary feature in it where I can just lean on it to get a boost. And if you lean on it for more than a second, then when you take your foot back off of it, it turns off, so you don't have to kind of click and click quickly again if you just want a boost for a little riff. You mentioned like Johnny Be Good, you know, like if you're the only guitarist in the band and you're punctuating those little riffs in the chorus as well as doing the rhythm playing, it's good to be able to just lean on it for that second and not have to click it twice, you know.
Yeah.
So I like the usability of that.
I think that's a really great feature, and I've watched guitarists. Joe Bonamassa is a very good one at this. There's plenty of guitarists that are brilliant at riding the volume pot as they're playing. Right, and they almost do it so quickly that you don't notice it. But if you actually look at their playing, and they do it not just from a tone perspective, but also to be able to cut through the mix at different points, or just add dynamics to their tone throughout the duration of a song, and play with different shades of light and dark throughout the song. They're constantly riding the volume pot, and to some extent the tone pots, right, to do that. And I think that's genius. And I've practiced it, and I'm getting better at doing it and being more comfortable doing it, but certainly for a number of years, even when gigging, it was never something I really felt comfortable doing because because the pots in the guitar that I was using at the time weren't sensitive enough, or I hadn't spent enough time finding where that sweet spot was on the pot to be able to boost and cut as I needed to, and because it felt just so much more easier to just step on a pedal in front of me to boost and step off it to drop back down. So I think for a lot of guitarists, that function that you're talking about, it will be really appealing in that pedal. What was it? The TC Electronics Mini Spark? TC Electronics Spark
Mini Booster. And I'm just looking at it now online on a retailer. And it's $39.99 at the moment. RRP 75 quid. And I think I paid 39 quid for it originally when I got it years ago. And it's super. And that's, my signal chain at the moment, if I was to go and gig now, all I would have would be my guitar into that Spark Boost, into the amp, The amp itself has got 2 levels of master volume, which I can switch between. And then in the effects loop of that, I've got a cheap TC Electronic reverb, just because the amp doesn't have reverb. And that's it. And if I was to gig, my clean sound and dirty sound would be through me adjusting the volume on my amp. I like that, actually. I find I play differently when I'm playing in that kind of setup. When I've had more complicated pedal boards before, with different levels of gain stages, different pedals for doing different sounds, you tend to look. I find I'd look to those settings more to achieve some kind of sound, and then I don't really think about what I'm playing as much. I tend to kind of just listen to how does that pedal sound. Whereas if I'm using the guitar and the volume pot and how heavy I play, I feel like I play more articulately, because I'm not just choosing notes or licks or things like that. I'm really trying to kind of, I guess, just be more articulate in my playing, and be more careful with note choices and things. So it's funny how your choices in equipment can inform kind of back through the signal chain how you play. And I think a lot of people would feel restricted not having as many options on the pedal board, but actually I find it a little bit liberating, because of that. Because I there's less thought about, I've got a solo coming up, I need to step off this pedal and quickly turn that one on.
The tap dancing effect.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously you can get switches that do everything for you, and that's fine. But if you don't have the need for that many different sounds, which I don't, then I find the best way is to kind of just simplify things down. And actually, when I first started gigging as a guitarist, the only thing I'd have on the floor was just a battery-powered distortion pedal of some kind to give me a guitar solo lift, and then everything would literally be digging in for a crunchier sound or backing off for a clean sound. That's kind of where I started anyway.
It's strange, isn't it? It was a concept I could never get my head around, but I have started getting my head around it now. And whether I'd use it in a live situation at the moment, I don't think I'm confident enough with it at this stage. I mean, certainly, definitely playing with volume controls and stuff like that, but in between songs. But just going out with such a stripped down rig as that, there's a guitarist called Tony, who very accomplished guitarist in the area, who goes and plays with a number of different kind of function bands and kind of soul bands and stuff. And I've watched him play, and it is a valve amp and his guitar and the volume control, and that's basically it. And he dials in his lead tone at the right volume to cut through the mix, and then he just plays with the tone controls and his volume control on the guitar for every song, and it's incredible to watch him do it. And it's just a style thing, but it works for him. But when I've gone with other guitarists to watch him, we're like, wow, bloody hell, that's such a confident thing to be able to do and not rely on pedals and the click of a switch to give you what you want. But I completely agree with you. It changes your approach to playing. Yeah. It makes you work with the tone that you've got, and if you need to be more articulate in your phrasing because the sound is as it is, and so you need to compensate for that, or if it just means you can sustain notes in a different way. That's a big thing that happens when you rely less on compressor pedals or boost pedals or drive pedals, and you just utilize the available sustain that's there, which may be a lot or it may be not quite as much as you'd want, but it changes your approach to playing and how you bend stuff. I think it's a really cool thing to do. But and also knowing that requires practice.
It does, but there's this thing that happens as well where, like, if you've always got another pedal to stand on, and you've always got that extra, you've always got somewhere to go. I can just stand on this other pedal, and I'm going to be even louder or bigger or dirtier sounding or whatever. But if you're just going into your amp, and I know that I'm on 9 on my volume on the guitar, and I've only got that one little kind of click up to go, it's kind of like it just make you kind of think more about less is more, which is quite an important thing. All my favourite guitarists are people who, when you listen to them play, you just know they've got more up their sleeve all the time. John Mayer is a perfect example of that.
Yes.
You listen to all his best guitar solos, and you just think the thing I've always loved about his playing is that element of self-restraint that he's kind of exercising, especially in his recordings. That's always been really a key thing for me, listening to other players. And Joe Bonamassa is a great example of that because of the way he chooses to play now, through a rig that is almost entirely controlled through the volume and tone pots on his guitar. Everything is set to 10 or 11 or 12
or 11,
possibly even 12 if he's playing through old Fenders. I think they went up to 12. I think the old Tweeds didn't. But he's kind of got that thing again of, if I know I'm building up to a really big loud section at the end of a song and I'm playing a long solo in a blues, you don't want to roll everything up to 10 and then not have anywhere to go. You have to really think about how you manipulate your guitar rather than go, well, I'm just going to step on that fuzz pedal when it gets to the big section. I'm going to go crazy now, and I can go crazy now because I've got a pedal to stand on later. Whereas if you haven't got that pedal to stand on, like, well, no, I'm going to exercise some self-restraint so that I can, I've got more to build up to later. So it does change the way you play, definitely.
So that self-restraint you're talking about is in the dynamics of how you attack the string, where you're playing on the fretboard, right? Because again, building the dynamics, you've got to be careful. You've got to be careful around where you start. You don't want to come out all guns blazing. And I've been very guilty of this in the past, particularly if it's like an 8-bar solo or something where you've got, you haven't got a slash amount of time in terms of 3 minutes to play a solo, right? That's longer than the song itself.
Slash amount of time.
That's
actually a technical term, isn't it?
I think so. And as a huge fan of Slash and who grew up listening to his music a lot and trying to emulate his tone and his playing, I thought that was how much time you got as a guitarist to play a solo in a song. And then you gig and you play all these different songs and you realise, no, you don't have that long. So then the temptation is to make it as explosive as possible, as quickly as possible, and then get out of it back into the song. Exactly. But that doesn't make for a great solo. It's still, even with a short amount of time, requires dynamics and a build to a peak rather than coming out, impatiently trying to nail it in a short time.
Perfect example of that is Hotel California by the Eagles. That guitar solo is it's almost like, hey, we're going to write a melody for the song which is sung, and let's write another melody for the song which is played on the guitar later on. It's not solo. It's not an expression of somebody's ability to play an instrument. It's we're going to write another melody for it, and it's going to, it's going to have a crescendo, isn't it? It's going to build up to something at the end. And actually, from that same album, there's a song from the same album called "Try to Love Again," which has just got one of my favourite guitar solos of all time. Super simple, and it's only like 4 bars of a guitar solo, but it's that exact same thought again. It's not for me to kind of shred over. I'm going to write another melody for the song, another bit of interest before we go back into the original melody. And that's, those things it's a lost art almost, I think.
I think I'll agree. I haven't heard that song, right? So that's one I'm going to have to go and listen to afterwards. I'm seeing a lot more, though, I would say. When you say it's a lost art, I'm seeing a lot more players coming through, particularly on YouTube and social media now, where melodic phrasing and note choice and being sympathetic to the song and hitting the chord tones throughout the solo is becoming, I mean, it's always been there, right? But now it gets spoken about and talked about, and I think the likes of John Mayer and Derek Trucks and those types of players coming through who have almost kind of vocal quality to their approach to guitar solos in particular are inspiring this new generation, and that's not to say there's anything wrong, because I am absolutely wedded to minor pentatonic shenanigans at full throttle over a rock song, right? But now kind of really appreciating how to construct a good guitar solo, I think, is becoming more spoken about and more brought to the forefront than shredding.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a good thing. But I do love a good shred.
We all do.
Everyone does. I mean, it's amazing. But I agree. I think there is more of that. Chris Buck, who you mentioned the other, a great example of a guitarist who can blaze, obviously, and really just shred if he wants to, but is
Yes.
a really good example of somebody who knows how to make good choices in what he plays. So sorry to interrupt this super interesting conversation. However, if you've made it this far, you should probably subscribe to the Guitar Smarts podcast. You can do that in your favourite podcast app. Go and do that now, and then come back to the show. Let's get back to it. Going back to what we were talking about cheap pedals. For me, it's not just about cheap pedals. It's about having... no, I don't want to overwhelm myself with choices that distract me from just enjoying playing. And I like listening to guitarists like Chris Buck, who is clearly not distracted from just making good music.
Yeah, I think that's a discipline, and I think that also comes by having a really good facility around the guitar, so that you are able to make good note choices and not agonize about the song and just play in a relaxed way. I think it comes with the confidence of knowing the guitar better and knowing your theory a bit better, where you can then feel confident in your own abilities and not try to mask it or hide it or compensate, probably is the better word, with too much effects or too much kind of wizardry in terms of pedals, and just be confident enough to let your playing speak for itself. And I think guitarists find that out a lot later than they probably should, and because we're all insecure to some extent about what we can do and what we can't do on the guitar, and there's a natural I think part of the whole gear acquisition syndrome is not just because it's nice and shiny and it's a new toy. It's this constant quest for the right tone, and with that comes the kind of constant belief that once you've found the right tone, it will make up for all of the things that you feel inadequate around the guitar with, and actually practice will do that, and better knowledge of theory will do that.
I agree. I absolutely agree. And I think there's also a choice to make, isn't there? Sometimes is, am I going to be eternally dissatisfied with what sounds I have available to me, or am I going to make a choice to say that this is my setup that I'm happy with, these are the choices that I have, and I'm going to use those choices for everything that I have to. I mean, if you're in a Pink Floyd covers band, that ethos isn't going to work. You're going to need a rig of some kind that gives you a plethora of choices to cover things that you need to. But if you're just in a general pub covers band, like we played in for a long time, then I think you should make a choice to kind of come down on a sound that you like and use that for whatever songs you choose to do, and be comfortable with it. I think that's a good thing to do. I think it's a difficult decision to make, but I think it's, like I said, I think it's quite liberating to simplify your rig, simplify your sound, and concentrate more on the experience of playing rather than trying to worry too much about how you think you sound and whether or not you meet the expectation in your mind. I think that's something that it's taken me a long time to get to. That's where I am now. I don't think I'll ever have a rig more complicated than I've got now, which is just a boost pedal into an amp and a reverb. And the boost pedal is only ever going to give me a gain boost now. It's not going to be a volume boost. It's just going to push a little bit harder into the front end. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel. But other pedals I've had in the past that I thought were fantastic. I think a Boss Blues Driver is one that I've had previously. I don't have one now, but one that I would always have again if I needed just a general gain pedal. I think that is one of the best. And again, super affordable, right? About 70 quid for a Boss Blues Driver.
70 quid, yeah. I've got one of those. I gigged it a lot, and I've gigged it in different positions. I am a big fan of gain staging with distortion pedals, and I need to watch that really based on the conversation we've just had around, overcomplicating a rig and things. But generally, at any given point, I'll have a kind of always on kind of slight boost to the main clean signal. Then I'll have a more crunchy pedal, which will kind of gain layer on top, and then I'll have a lead distortion overdrive pedal as well, and I'll use varying combinations of the three of those, and the Blues Driver was one that I had on my first proper pedal board that I built, because I'd heard that John Mayer had used one for a period of time. I think, and it's just known as a good pedal, right? And it's not too expensive. It's 70 quid. You can get a lot cheaper pedals than that. But I was lucky enough. My wife bought it for me, I think, for my birthday. And I used it as that in that last position of the kind of gain stage for quite a long time, which was as the main lead tone, almost with something else driving it. And it's a really good sound. It can get very kind of overdriven and give you that sustaining lead sound that you want. But I found it wasn't a particularly natural drive sound from the amp. It's got its own, very much its own color to it. It's not a transparent drive sound in it when you really ramp up the gain. But that's fine if you're after that particular type of quite saturated, quite modern sounding high gain. It's not a metal pedal, but it can go relatively.
There's a lot of gain in it, isn't
there? There is a lot of gain, particularly if you drive it a little bit with a kind of boost pedal in front of it. But the best results I had with the Blues Driver was actually almost as that in that first gain stage position, where it just adds a little bit of clean and crunch and boost to your already clean signal, and use that as the almost on pedal. With Fender amps, it works really nicely because you're using almost like a volume boost and with a little bit of the gain dialed in, so you don't get that unnatural coloured drive sound. You just get it pushing and slightly colouring the Fender amp, and it creates a really a little bit of hair on it, and it works really nicely with a single coil guitar and a Fender style amp in that kind of clean, slightly driven position.
Imagine that's one of those pedals that a lot of players will use as like an always on kind of thing, as their clean sound or the kind of bass sound is, you know, their amp, their guitar, and that pedal on all the time with just a little bit of something added on. You know, that's and actually that's something I've never done I've never really had one of those always on pedals kind of thing, because I always feel like, well, if it's always on, what's it doing? Well, you know, why can't I turn it off and on and feel the benefit, you know, kind of thing. From time to time. I've never.
So my philosophy about the always on pedal was the same, I guess, in the beginning, which is, does that mean I don't like the clean sound of my amp? Right? So then what have I got the wrong amp? But it's not. I think it's, I've kind of got my head around it a little bit in terms of, as an always on pedal, it should be a really subtle, noticeable, but subtle effect on what it does. And this is where the kind of next category of pedal I think fits really nicely, which is the kind of the Klon Centaur type clones. So I know a lot of people use the Klon in a very gritty, dirty, drive sense, because it's great for that and it's got a lot of gain in it. But I love it as that, just after the kind of clean channel. I don't have a real one, obviously. They're like $2,000 plus, but I've got a number of different.
Money.
Oh, it's crazy. The original guy who made it was just he's almost embarrassed and offended by the hype that's existed around this pedal. He just thinks it's ridiculous. It's just like, come on, it's a guitar pedal. I'm sure he's benefited from it, but even he thinks it's stupid that people spend this money on this pedal that he made. But it's inspired a whole range of different clones of them, and I think that works really nice as that kind of almost on bit. You retain the clean innate sound of your amp, which hopefully you like anyway, but it just gives it a little bit more of a push, so that when you dig in, it just almost starts to break up, and that's a kind of nice thing to then layer different drive pedals on top of already.
I had I think it was an Electro-Harmonix Soul Food, which I think was like I think that was like a Klon type thing. Yeah, or definitely. Meant to be a Klon type sound. Is that what you've got? Have you had that?
I just turned around and looked at my board to see if it was still on there, and it is. It goes in and out off the board. I'm a big fan of the pedal. I'm not sure it's the best clone. You've got to be careful how you say that out there. It definitely was supposed to be based on one of those. A lot of people think it is a good clone. I think it's really good as an always on pedal to just boost that front part of your signal a little bit. It gives this. Here's what I like about it. I like the name. I think Soul Food's a cool name for a pedal.
Soul Food or Klon?
Sorry. No, Soul Food. Soul Food. I think it's a cool name. I love the price point.
Yeah.
I think when I bought it, it was 59 quid or something.
Yeah.
Really, really affordable.
Yeah.
I think it's not built like a tank. I don't think so. So that's something I don't like about it. It does still feel a little bit. It's got a full metal casing and everything, but you know, it doesn't. I think it wouldn't stand too much abuse.
It's not a very refined design, is it?
No,
it's Electro Harmonics classic kind of.
Yeah.
Like you say, that's that little metal case that's just been screen printed, and that's it, kind of thing.
It doesn't exude quality in terms of the feel of the pedal itself, but the sound of it is great. It does something really nice to the kind of touch sensitivity and dynamics that you get from the guitar. So having it on, and I think this is part of the way in which it EQs. So the one thing that I don't like about it, which is why I kind of swapped it out and interchange it with the blues driver and things, is it does cut the low end of your sound. So you can have a really nice, rounded, chimey, single coil sound on your Fender style amp, and then as soon as you engage the soul food, you get this wonderful kind of almost increased sensitivity to your touch and these additional very subtle harmonics that just make it, you know, sparkle even more. But you do lose, it does cut the low end, which which it may be fine in a live setting anyway, because you don't want too much low end muddying your sound, but for home use and things like that, sometimes it can be a bit off-putting. It can make your guitar sound a little bit thinner than it actually is, or your amp sound a bit thinner than it is. But it's a really great pedal, and I definitely say for people to try it out. It's lovely for doing kind of finger picked work on an electric and stuff. It just brings out the dynamics of the guitar really nicely.
Yeah, I think they're great. I enjoyed mine, but invariably I've always been the kind of person who's had a one in, one out policy with my equipment kind of thing. You know, I've never kind of bought pedals and then if I've wanted to replace one, replaced it and stuck it in a drawer. I've always been, well, if it's not on my board anymore, it's going to exist on eBay instead for a week, you know. So I don't have it anymore, you know, but I did enjoy that. I liked that actually, in combination with back when I was actually having more drives on my board, with a pedal you recommended to me, which was this.
I know which one
you know which one I'm going to say. Yeah, it was a Bayang.
Do you remember it?
Yeah, is it a Bayang OD8 or something like that? I can't remember the exact model, but I should know. But it was one of these kind of, I think it was on Amazon actually or eBay, and it was fairly cheap, 30 quid or so. Meant to be like a Tube Screamer clone kind of thing. Same controls, but it came with different op-amp chips that you could swap out different chips. I never did that. I just had it set to kind of the classic 808 setting. Yeah. And that was a killer pedal. And funnily enough, I think a lot of people who would have a Tube Screamer and a Klon would have the Klon as a clean boost and the Tube Screamer as like a solo drive. For me, I love them as the opposite. When I had the Soul Food and the and that Bayang thing, I love that Bayang as like a really loud volume boost, because it would cut, because it's like a Tube Screamer, you know, it would give you a mid boost and it would roll off the low end. So it would really cut, and I really like the Soul Food with a lot of gain. It's like this really thick,
interesting
kind of, you know, almost like a early 90s, late 80s Clapton lead sound. You know, you remember Journeyman, you know, things like that. I really loved that kind of almost woman tone, you know, thing. I thought the Soul Food was good for that. So
on a higher gain setting, you use the Soul Food to get that.
Definitely.
Interesting. So the pedal you're talking about, you remembered it perfectly. It is, and I still have one. It's not on the board at the moment, but I've recommended this to a few people, pro guitarists who are gigging every day. You know, COVID-19 aside, and they love it. They've gone, I cannot believe this pedal. It is so good. Not just because of the price of it, which I think when I bought it, was it 30 to 40 quid? I think
it wasn't more than that. I don't remember paying more than 30 or 40 quid for it. And it was actually really well made as well. It was in a nice solid case, simple design. You know, it was a great pedal. The first time I tried it was in a Roadrunner rehearsal, and I just remember thinking, this is fantastic. This is really, really just articulate sounding pedal. You know, a lot of detail. You know, a good sound by itself. I'd actually never owned a Tube Screamer at that point, a bona fide one, so I didn't have anything to kind of compare it to. And actually, that was probably to its benefit. at the time. But yeah, that was a great pedal. Cheap pedal as well.
Can I add some controversy to this?
Go on.
I'm not sure I get the Tube Screamer. Yeah. I mean, look, I get the Tube Screamer, but I think for a lot of guitarists, obviously this is setup dependent. But so let me phrase it in a different way. I couldn't get the Tube Screamer to do what I wanted it to in the way that I thought it would. Right, and this will show my naivety, and I think plenty of people will write to me and tell me I'm an idiot and I didn't do it the right way. But I was under the misapprehension that if I plugged a Tube Screamer into a Fender-style clean amp with single coils, I would get instant Stevie Ray tone. Yeah. Right? Of course, I wasn't that naive, but I at least get close to it, right? Yeah. And I don't think the Tube Screamer. The more I've played with it, and I bought an expensive 808 one reissued, and thought, right, no, this is it. This is going to get me my Stevie Ray type tone that I want. It's a good pedal, don't get me wrong. It sounds great, but I think the real virtues of the Tube Screamer is when it pushes and over the edge an already loud amp that's close to its headroom boundaries already, and you kick in the Tube Screamer then, and it absolutely then adds that kind of mid hump that you need from a Tube Screamer, that classic sound. It adds that extra sustain, it adds that raunchiness. So I think it's great if you've got an amp that you can drive at that volume and then use the Tube Screamer to push it in that way. If you from my experience, if you just take a clean channel signal on a Fender amp, and the Fender amps can go pretty loud, the valve ones, before they start to break up. So if you try and use it at what would be considered a reasonable practicing, certainly home use volume, but even for a lot of small sized pubs, and you crank that amp and try and then push it with a Tube Screamer, you're going to be way too loud to get that sound. And I don't think it works as anywhere near as nicely as some of the other pedals that I've got to give me that sound when it's trying to push a very clean amp already. It doesn't deliver on the promise at lower volumes.
And I don't disagree. I think it's very much one of those kind of in context sounds. It works in certain situations, and you don't always listen to it with that situation in mind. And also, it's as much as an EQ pedal as it is a drive pedal. It really is a tone shaping thing. That's why it's so popular with a lot of people, because why is the Tube Screamer so popular as a guitarist tool for kind of solos and things? Because it changes your guitar sound in a way that not only gives it more gain, which you want for soloing, but it is something that if you were to ask a sound engineer how would you make something pop out in a mix, you would say, well, okay, as a sound engineer, I'd want to increase the gain in the frequencies that are more percepted by the human ear, which is the mid frequency. It's exactly what a Tube Screamer does, So that's why one of the reasons they're so popular, because, well, every guitarist wants to be, the center of the universe when it's time for the guitar solo, and that's what Tube Screamer does. I completely agree. It is very much kind of a context machine.
It's a context machine.
It's not a sound off and by itself, is it? It's in, and again, it does so much in the mid range. That's why it sounds so great with a Fender amp that tends to have, a scooped mid range by, generally anyway. If you had that going into a Marshall, like a Plexi style thing, where, then it would shave your head whilst you're playing. It would be ridiculous.
Exactly.
So I agree. Actually, I'm not a huge Tube Screamer fan myself, but that buying one was a great buy.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I got more joy out of the 30-40 quid Bayang one. It has the same chipset as the Tube Screamer, which a lot of the Tube Screamer clones have anyway. It's a chipset that's what found in a lot of different Tube Screamer style pedals, but the Bayang has it. I interchange the chips that it comes with. It comes with 3 different chips, all of which are supposed to put different tonal qualities. They're very subtle, so I just stuck with the original one. But I just found it worked quite nicely. The only thing I would say about the Bayang pedal is the thing that betrays it as a slightly cheap pedal is it at the higher gains it does get quite noisy, and it adds a lot of noise to the overall signal, I think. But It's a fantastic pedal, and I feel slightly dirty in saying that it gave me more pleasure to play that pedal than it did a really expensive TS-808 in my rig. And
cheaper, dirtier things often have that effect.
That's true. I can recommend another pedal though that I think was worth the money, a bit more expensive, and for anyone that's looking for that kind of Texasy blues style, Stevie Ray type, John Mayer kind of dirtier sound that I thought the TS-808 was going to give me, but it didn't quite. It's a pedal by a company called Love Pedal.
Okay,
and it's called the Super 6, and I think the one that I've got is actually it's badged as having this Stevie mod to it.
Right.
So that's a long title for a pedal, isn't it? The Love Pedal Super 6 Stevie mod.
Right. Okay.
And what it tries to do as a pedal is capture, I think, that sound of a very driven Fender amp at the point of breakup, with like a type of tube screamer pushing it.
Right,
so
okay.
it's not an emulation pedal. It's just that's how they've EQ'd it to try and get, and it does it. It absolutely does it. You can take a very clean platform, put this in as the only thing, and you get this wonderful overdrive sound that's got plenty of dynamics and just delivers.
Really natural sounding.
Oh, it sounds great. Yeah. It sounds really, really good. And I've used it live a couple of times, and it's just an absolute pleasure. It really works at all different volumes in a much more predictable way than the Tube Screamer did. So it's not an inexpensive pedal. It's not boutique prices, but I think it was a couple of £100, but it was well worth it.
Yeah.
And it did what I thought the Tube Screamer would do for me.
Yeah. I'll tell you what else I like about the cheaper pedals is they all just tend to have a normal foot switch. Which sounds stupid, but the other thing I've never liked about a Tube Screamer, and I've never had a Tube Screamer, but I did recently own an Ibanez SD9, which was the same case, right? So that was more like an 80s style kind of distortion, which is still quite nice, but it had that classic Ibanez pedal, which was like, I don't know how to describe it really, like a flat kind of steel plate that kind of pivots in. And, you know, almost every time I gigged it and I had to stand on that for a solo, it would be 3 or 4 presses or stamps. I mean, I'd look like Michael Flatley probably trying to, you know, and that's one of the main reasons I got rid of it. And I just like pedals that just have a nice, normal, big old silver click switch, you know, can't miss that with my stupid feet. Simple things like that, you know. I like simple things. I like things that get out of your way when you're trying to play. You know, and don't make you feeling like you're relying on something to work. Yeah. Otherwise, you can't play. Well, that shouldn't be the case. You know, spent too long, you know, mastering an instrument and learning how to play something. I shouldn't have to let a small box with a switch on it to, you know, be the arbiter of whether I'm going to, you know, enjoy playing tonight or not. You know, so to get something that gets in the way of that seems counterintuitive to me. But that's taken a while to get to, you know. Yeah,
it does. Again, it's that confidence to just be brave enough to get a good amp that you're happy with the sound of, a guitar that plays really nicely that you're happy with, and just keep it light on the effects and utilise the volume, your tone controls and the EQ that's on the amp to get the sound that you want, and then just be able to hit a pedal if you need a bit of a little bit of extra lift at certain points.
Certain things are essential, I think. I think having enough headroom to play at a volume that's acceptable for your gig. You know, you don't want to be kind of like, well, I just can't get this amp loud enough. I think reverb's essential, especially if you're the only guitarist in a band, because you want to feel, you know, a bit of space and a bit of ambience when you're playing. And I think having something that gives you enough gain staging capability so that you can roll your volume all down and still get a loud enough clean sound without reducing your volume, and, you know, and get a good lead sound. And then I would say if you're a guitarist who is, you know, has got a board full of pedals, next time you go and do a gig, challenge yourself to just take 3 pedals along or 1, and just see if you can get through the gig manipulating your guitar a different way. Yeah. I think like, you know, you and anybody else who would challenge themselves to do that, you'd probably find it more enjoyable than you think it would be a challenge. Definitely.
I think you're right. it's less to worry about. It's less to try and agonize around about, oh, have I dialed in this pedal in this way that I had at the last gig, and is it
exactly?
Is it? Yeah, and then that's fine if it's one pedal, but when you've got like 7, 8, 9 different pedals in front of you, all set up in a way that they're interacting with each other and gain staging off of each other and all of that, it can really get in the way of the playing, and not to mention the way it can actually sap your tone. All of that is adding into the resistance of the signal chain, and you'd be surprised at how much you can lose, even if you use the most expensive patch cables and leads or wireless guitar kit. It's still everything. I think that's good discipline. For every pedal that you're adding into your signal chain that you think is going to give you a better sound, also factor in the fact that it is an extra bit that is taking away from the innate sound of your guitar and amp because of the way in which it adds that kind of signal kind of interference into the overall chain.
Exactly. Everything's going to take something away as well as add to it. Keep that in mind. Anyway.
Good stuff, mate. More pedals and stuff next week. More guitar stuff next week. And really good to catch up with you today, mate. Hopefully we've discussed a few pedals in a bit more detail, but I've still got plenty more that I want to, as I know you have, cast my review on what I like and what I don't like.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too, mate. It's been great as always. Good to catch up. Have a cracking week.
And you.
And I'll speak to you later. All the best, buddy.
Take care, buddy.
Take care, mate. Another interesting conversation. Hope you enjoyed it. Come back for more next week. To make sure you don't miss it, subscribe to this podcast on your favourite podcast app so you never miss a show. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/guitarsmarts. Like us on Instagram at guitar_smarts. Anyway, have a cracking week. Speak soon.